All right, I'm here to give you a brief overview of how to think like a pragmatist. Stop leaving your bullshit opinions, question the theories like flat earth, right? And challenge your beliefs because we don't know everything. So this is about humility, fallibilism. We're all fallible as human beings. We don't get to have accuracy, right, in our theories, beliefs, and opinions, and our principles. They change over time. So I'm talking about the key pragmatists. My favorite is Charles Sanders Peirce, who gave us a science of inquiry with 3 modes. The induction, collect some cases out there, right? Stop believing your own bullshit. Then they had deduction, theories, different kinds of logic, different theories of cause and effect, correlation, right? They're not the same thing. So do some of that. And third, abduction. What is it? It's a guess, a wild guess. It's an intuition. It's a hunch. It's not a hypothesis. People get that all wrong. No, it's a wild guess, a hunch, an intuition. Better way to think about it. So we do that, and Charles Sanders Peirce got us going in 1877, 1878, on through the early 1900s. And then Charles Sanders Peirce got sidestepped by William James. He wrote a book called Pragmatism and popularized it. Now, he was a psychologist. He really didn't give a shit about the science. He only cared about, how do people think? What's it good for? What do they believe? Now, he did do something really powerful. He separated out the oneness of a truth, like there's only one truth. He called that monoism, and he developed pluralism. There are many truths out there, people. We all have different ones. We have some of the same ones here and there, but we don't overlap. People are very, very different on what they say. This is the truth. I have the facts. No, you don't. Facts have been disproven over and over again. Theories disproven over and over again. Watch my other video on 10 the most mistaken theories and beliefs of all time. But here, I just want to give you that overview. Now, Charles Peirce was so pissed off at William James' little book on pragmatism that he changed the name to Pragmatism. Well, nobody ever remembered that. And William James won the battle of becoming the most popular theory, but not necessarily the best theory. Now, I like to introduce Jane Addams, who got beyond all this and went out into the community, formed a whole house in Chicago's slums, right where they had the slaughterhouses and they had meat packing plants, and people were working in factories getting lead poisoning and didn't even know what lead poisoning was. There was no child care. There was no system for mothers to get more than 50 cents an hour. So they had tied their children to a chair, tied them to a pipe on the radiator, if they even had a radiator. Sewage ran through the streets, right? There was no sewage in the area where the immigrants lived. She moved there, and she put pragmatism into action. She was very, very important to founding social work, ending child labor with some child labor laws. Stop getting children arrested and put in jail with adult felons, people doing all kinds of nefarious shit. And so she was awesome. Now, we all know about James Dewey, that he's the father of education. What you may not know is in 1927, he read Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It's actually the principle of indeterminacy, which fits well with Peirce's notion that you got to admit to our own fallibility. We're fallible people. We get it wrong more often than get it right. So, what did Dewey do with that? Well, he got all into quantum mechanics and the observer effect and changed his whole paradigm of what pragmatism is. He'd been working with it before and was pretty well known, you know. And that's the turn that's really important to quantum storytelling in our annual quantum storytelling conference is what is quantum storytelling? What does it mean to do that kind of inquiry, to live your life that way? Well, John Dewey has the book in 1929. He gave the very famous lectures in Scotland, made a book out of it. I mean, in 2 years, created a whole book and a whole new approach to pragmatism that really stands today. Now, I don't cover another really great pragmatist in this video, but I have another video on it. Check togetherstorying.com. It's ing, story ing, not story. Story is this thing stuck in mud, you know, crystallized. It's like one of those beginning, middle, end narratives. Stuck, not dynamic. Storying is a verb, very dynamic. Anyway, so what did we learn from Richard Rorty? Richard Rorty didn't believe in the Godhead. He didn't believe in Kantian universalism, universal principles. Didn't believe any of that. And he advocated, like myself, he was a postmodernist for a while, but then we got accused of being relativists, believing any old thing, and he said, that's bullshit, and so do I say, that's bullshit. So we stopped. And he was my early inspiration in pragmatism. I was a critical theorist, still am, and critical of beliefs, critical of theories, critical of principles, even my own, right? Because, you know, you got to do something practical like Jane Addams. And this is where Dewey and Jane Addams with 2 Ds, right? And you know, the pragmatists of my time are trying to figure out, you know, how to get social consensus. Well, consensus doesn't work. You end up with groupthink. This is where Richard Rorty, I think, overstepped. But he did have a philosophy of hope, similar to Jane Addams. He didn't get that directly involved, but he did think to have democracy actually worked, we had to get out of the dualities. He was against all kinds of dualities. I covered that in the Richard Rorty video. So again, to go to truth, you want one truth? Not there. Think of polyphony, right? Mikhail Bakhtin's notion that we all want to stand in our own, right? Once a current conviction of what's true, but we recognize that other people have a lot of truths, just like William James said. You know, and I wish James and Charles Sanders Peirce didn't argue so much, but, you know, what the heck. So go to togetherstorying.com, find out more of the videos. And we got software online that I'll tell you about at the end of this video. I created this little video so you can learn more about what are the different kinds of pragmatisms, what are they good for.
So how do you know that what you believe is, well, actually true? I mean, in a world that's just overflowing with information, trying to form solid beliefs can feel totally overwhelming, right? But what if there was a better way to think about it all? Not just about what to believe, but how we believe in the first place. That's the big idea we're going to unpack today. For the longest time, philosophy basically had one big idea about how we gain knowledge. You could call it the spectator theory. The idea was that our minds are like a camera, you know, just passively taking a photograph of a reality that's already out there, fixed and unchanging. But then a completely new view started to take hold. One that said knowledge is an active interaction, more like being a wrestler in a dark room. You can't understand something without grabbing onto it. And the moment you do, you change it, and it changes you. And that really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? Are we just watching the world go by from the sidelines, or are we actually in the ring, helping to create reality as we go? This one fundamental shift in thinking launched one of America's most powerful and, I think, most useful philosophies, pragmatism. So picture this. It's the late 19th century, and a group of brilliant American thinkers are sitting around talking, and they basically decide that this old spectator model just doesn't work in the real world. So they came up with a radical new way of thinking about truth itself, one that's built for a world of action, consequences, and getting things done. Now, this whole philosophy didn't just pop up overnight. Oh no, it's been evolving for over 150 years. It all started back in the 1870s with this informal group called the Metaphysical Club. From there, William James made it famous, and then John Dewey totally reinvented it by connecting it to, of all things, quantum physics. And what's so cool is that it's still adapting. Today, its core ideas are being baked into modern tools for management and coaching. It really is a living, breathing philosophy. So let's start at the beginning, with the guy who was really the logical architect of the whole movement, Charles Sanders Peirce. Peirce was obsessed with a single, very human problem, that uncomfortable, nagging, irritating feeling of doubt, and our desperate struggle to find a solid, reliable belief to make it go away. To tackle this, Peirce laid out what he called his 4 methods of fixing belief. You can think of it as a kind of roadmap. On one side, you have the easy, comfortable, subjective ways we tend to form our beliefs. And on the other side, you've got a much harder path, an objective one, but it's the only one that leads to beliefs that can actually last. So what are these 4 methods? Well, first, there's what he called tenacity. This is basically just pure stubbornness, right? It's when you cling to what you believe, plug your ears, and ignore anything that contradicts it. Super comfortable, for a while. Then you've got authority, where you just outsource your thinking to a powerful institution or person. The third method is a priori. It's a fancy term for adopting beliefs that just feel right or seem agreeable to reason, without ever actually checking if they hold up. Peirce said these first 3 all share a massive fundamental flaw. They're all about you, and they're totally disconnected from reality. And that led him to his 4th and most powerful method, science, the only method that forces our beliefs to actually go head-to-head with an independent external world. And this is why Peirce was so passionate about the scientific method. Look, the other methods, they give you subjective truths with 0 quality control. But science gives you a stable, self-correcting system. But here's the most important difference, the one that really matters. It's about virtue. The first 3 methods are all designed to prioritize your comfort. The method of science is the only one that prioritizes integrity, having the guts to follow the evidence wherever it leads, especially when it leads somewhere uncomfortable. So Peirce laid all this incredible logical groundwork, but pragmatism really became a full-blown movement because of a conversation, a back and forth between some other amazing thinkers who took his ideas and ran with them. First step, you've got William James, the great popularizer of pragmatism. He was both a psychologist and a philosopher, so he wasn't as interested in abstract logic. He wanted to know how our minds actually function. He kept asking, what's the practical purpose of our thoughts? What job do our beliefs actually do for us out there in the messy real world? And one of James's biggest contributions was his all-out attack on this old idea called monism, the belief that there's one single, unified, capital T truth that explains everything. James said, no way. He championed pluralism. He argued that the world we actually live in isn't some perfectly joined block. It's a messy, diverse, common-sense world of many truths, all bumping up against each other. Okay, next up is John Dewey. And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. He took these ideas and connected them to what was, at the time, the most mind-blowing scientific revolution of the 20th century. So in 1927, Werner Heisenberg publishes his famous uncertainty principle. It basically showed that on the quantum level, you can't know a particle's exact position and its momentum at the same time. The very act of looking at one changes the other. For most of traditional philosophy, this was a disaster, the end of certainty. But for John Dewey, he was thrilled. It was the ultimate proof of the pragmatist worldview. The spectator was officially dead. We aren't just watching reality. The act of observation is an interaction that fundamentally changes it. Now, you might be thinking this is all just for academics in ivory towers. Well, meet Jane Addams. She showed the world how to put pragmatism into practice. She co-founded Hull House in Chicago, a social settlement for new immigrants, and she used pragmatism as her guiding tool. For her, it wasn't some abstract theory, it was a hands-on method for understanding different communities and tackling huge problems like child labor and public health. She didn't just study the philosophy, she lived it. So that's the history, and it's absolutely fascinating. But how are these ideas being used today? Well, it turns out that the core logic of these pioneers is maybe more relevant now than it's ever been. This here is like the original pragmatist toolkit, a cycle of reasoning. It starts with induction, which is just observing the world, gathering facts. Then comes deduction, where you form a hypothesis and test it out. But the secret sauce, the magic ingredient, was abduction, that creative leap you take to form a brand new theory when something surprising happens. This cycle was the engine that powered their thinking. And now, check this out. That exact same logical cycle is at the very heart of modern frameworks, like something called together storying, which is a method used in professional coaching and helping big organizations change. The names are different, sure, but that core process, gathering data, testing our ideas, and creating new stories to make sense of it all, it's exactly the same. This modern toolkit has things like guides for ethical communication, tools for asking deeper questions, and even frameworks for helping groups get on the same page. Every single piece echoes that original pragmatist spirit. What are the real-world consequences of our ideas, and how can we work together to solve real-world problems? Okay, so let's bring all this home. How can you take this powerful way of thinking and actually apply it to your own life, like right now? It all starts with becoming aware of your own mental filters. Think of your mind as having two main story filters that you look at the world through. First, you've got a doubt filter. This one is awesome at questioning, poking holes in arguments, and finding flaws. Then, you've got a belief filter. This one is fantastic at finding evidence to confirm what you already think is true, and it's great for building confidence and taking action. And here is the absolute key takeaway. A pragmatist mindset isn't about saying doubt is good and belief is bad, or vice versa. They are both essential tools in your mental toolkit. The real goal is to be consciously aware of the process. It's about being able to step back and ask yourself, okay, which filter am I using right now, and is it the right tool for this particular job?
And that's really the question I want to leave you with. As you finish listening to this, as you go about the rest of your day, just start to notice your own thinking. Pay attention to that process. Which filter are you looking through right now?
Togetherstorying.com, and you can find more films about pragmatists, and try our new software where you can change your story in more of a pragmatist view. Rewrite it and rewrite it. It's free. Thank you very much.